Hey, DawgNation, I'm Brandon Adams. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. Sorry for being late today. I can tell you all the reasons why. You don't want to hear it. You just want the show. So I can promise you this. The good news is, after all the wait to begin, it will be a good one today. We'll hear from Terence Edwards on today's show. He has actually spoken recently with, now in the transfer portal, one of the true top figures around the DawgNation news cycle at the moment, Rick Gilbert. We'll hear from Terence Edwards about that on today's show. We will also hear from Mike Griffith today, who was supposed to be with us yesterday. Mike's got some really interesting things to say, evaluating the hire of Josh Brooks, as an athletic director, what is next for Georgia in terms of will they or won't they, players coming and going, and for 2021 around the Bulldogs roster. Mike will give us the latest on all of that. I'll share some thoughts in between myself. There is big drama in the SEC, and I don't say that lightly. I'm not exaggerating. Very, very intriguing stuff going on to the north of us in Knoxville, to the west of us at Auburn. Boy, these are certainly powerful times around the world of college football, and let's face it, we could all use a distraction, so let's give you one. DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Merriweather and Tharp, begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Engineered Solutions of Georgia. Dial 678-ESOG now for a solution to your foundation and waterproofing problems.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
I realize there's a lot going on in the world, and it seems like a lot of it's not good, and it seems like over the course of the last few months, year or so, we've had to start shows that way kind of semi-frequently. My opinion on all of this has never really changed, which is I don't believe I make anything better by kind of shouting my thoughts on anything happening outside the boundaries of what we normally talk about. The best thing I can probably do is just do my job, and so that is what we will do today, focusing on the topic at hand, which is Georgia football. Not because it's more important than anything else going on in the rest of the world, but just because that's the service that we provide around here, and that is what we'll look forward to doing. And there is one name in particular I wanted to start today's show with, and that is Georgia outside linebacker Nolan Smith. And there's a specific reason why I begin with Nolan today. First of all, let me go back to September when Nolan was speaking with reporters, and the topic around Georgia for a little while has been, if you want to go back to before the start of this season, a couple springs ago, Georgia's pursuit of more of what it called havoc plays. You've probably heard me say that phrase 1,000 times, I bet, on the show. Sacks, tackles for loss, those impactful negative plays that defenses can get. And I would say in 2019, Georgia's attempt to get more of those was just kind of okay, probably kind of faltered towards the end of the season, but renewed focus on that at the start of the 2020 season. And Georgia outside linebacker Nolan Smith, always a thoughtful interview, shared his belief in Georgia's ability to kind of turn that around and improve in that category during the 2020 season. This is what Nolan said a few months ago.
I mean, of course, we know that getting sacks were a problem, but during the offseason, we identify problems and try to fix it. And, again, that's up to our coaches and Coach Lanning for them to make the scheme. And I trust them, whatever we have planned for the week, that we get more sacks, or for the year, that we get more sacks, more TFLs. And like they say, we're going to cause a lot of havoc.
As it turns out, Nolan's prediction there actually turned out to be true. Georgia was third in the SEC this year with 32 sacks after being seventh in the SEC a year ago with 31. Now, the overall end-of-season total doesn't sound all that different until you realize what most of you are obviously fully aware of, which is that Georgia only played 11 games in the 2020 season after having played 14 in the 2019 season. Georgia actually averaged more than a sack per game better in 2020 than it had performed in 2019, and we all saw this with our own eyes in the Peach Bowl on Friday. I've said this multiple times that I believe that Georgia, the 2019 version of the Georgia Bulldogs, would have actually lost to the Bearcats in the Peach Bowl, because what Georgia did against Desmond Ridder, the quarterback, they weren't doing as much in 2019 as Nolan Smith himself said there. They weren't getting after quarterbacks with sacks and tackles for loss. But for me on Friday, that was truly the difference in the game. The bowl game, kind of a microcosm of the season overall. Georgia, while being not quite as good in a lot of defensive categories, was truly better as a pass rush, and as I've said, makes me optimistic about the upcoming season for Georgia defensively, because I like the way the defense is now built and constituted, even if the overall totality of results probably not as good as it was a year ago. But, and there is a big caveat to all of this, the leader of the Georgia defense from Friday, Azeez Ojulari, has announced his intentions to go on to the NFL draft. Another key member of that Georgia pass rush, a guy who really got after quarterbacks really all season long when given his chance, Jermaine Johnson, he has decided to transfer on to Florida State. All of a sudden, what had one point in time been, and I think I've said this before on the show, that I'm not quite sure any program has ever quite recruited the outside linebacker position over the course of the last couple of years, as well as Georgia has, with all the great talent it stocked at that position. And for a while, it kind of seemed like Georgia had a glut of talent at that position, too many guys, so much so that a guy like Jermaine Johnson is assumed to want to leave Georgia because he wasn't getting as much playing time, because you're having to split reps and opportunities between Ojulari and Nolan Smith, who you heard from a moment ago, and Johnson, who I just mentioned, Adam Anderson, who was also a big part of what happened on Friday against Cincinnati, that you had so many guys, you couldn't play them all. MJ Sherman, very highly touted freshman, wasn't heard from a lot this year, and it's all the guys a little older, a little ahead of him on the depth chart that would sort of seem to be the reason why. But in 2021, as I said before, there is no Jermaine Johnson. There is no Azeez Ojulari. We assume it'll be Adam Anderson. We'll assume it'll be Nolan Smith, obviously a year older version of MJ Sherman. All of a sudden now, though, it seems like Georgia, instead of having too many outside linebackers, more than you can give enough reps to, all of a sudden now it possibly has just enough, just enough guys to go out there and get the job done. But just enough is at least enough. And I did think it was really interesting that when Azeez Ojulari, on having declared for the NFL draft, very timely interview, great job by Jeff Sentell getting this scheduled. It was on the DawgNation video channels. Azeez reflecting back on his Georgia career, his decision to move on to the NFL, but also taking some time to talk about what he leaves behind at UGA. And some of those names I just mentioned, Nolan and Adam Anderson and MJ Sherman, Azeez Ojulari, having worked beside them, having developed with them, Ojulari believes that those guys, with him no longer in the program, what is left behind for Georgia at outside linebacker, they are more than capable of getting the job done. In fact, Ojulari predicts that's exactly what they will do. Let me let you hear Azeez from the other day on the DawgNation video channels.
I got my boys, definitely. I know pass the torch on to Nolan Smith, Adam Anderson, MJ Sherman. It's on. Them boys gonna ball. I already know it. They destined for greatness. I'm telling you, they coming. I promise you that. Them boys work too hard. They coming.
So I think that's really exciting from Azeez Ojulari to hear that. I always like when former Georgia players give their evaluation of the current guys on the roster. But of those three names that Ojulari mentions there, Adam Anderson, Nolan Smith, MJ Sherman, with apologies to Anderson and Sherman, I believe there's no doubt that Nolan Smith is the most important name on that list. That if Georgia's going to continue what I believe was a very nice developing trend in 2020 of getting after quarterbacks better, being a little more impactful in the backfield, more sacks, more tackles for loss, that the continued development of Nolan Smith is a huge part of that. Now, Nolan's one of those guys that kind of shows up as a topic of questions in the DawgNation forum during games at forum.dawgnation.com, sometimes on our comments sections during the live shows on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. And some people are left to wonder sometimes, well, where is Nolan Smith? What is Nolan Smith doing? And I think part of that's because maybe you're not seeing through 2 years in a Georgia uniform exactly the statistical profile you might would have expected from the nation's former number one recruit. But I think that sometimes that can be misleading. I don't believe that anyone within the Georgia coaching staff probably thinks that Smith has somehow underachieved or been less than what they expected. Georgia has had good performances in the outside linebacking core, and guys like Ojulari working their way towards being very high draft picks. You want that guy on the field. You've got to make some room for him, and some of that has taken away opportunity from Nolan Smith. But now, as I said before, Ojulari's gone. Jermaine Johnson is gone. Adam Anderson's a very good player. MJ Sherman could be a very good player, certainly a dazzling prospect. But Nolan Smith has credentials that the rest don't have. He is the nation's former number one recruit. He is the guy that has so much in the way of expectations that have been all over him ever since he arrived at UGA. And this would seem to be the time to put that all on display. This would seem to be an off-season where he can put himself physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever else you want to say, in position to do everything that we believed was a possibility for him when he first arrived on the Georgia campus. Because, listen, I've talked about this a lot before. that for Georgia to be the best version that a defense can be here in the year of 2021, having a superstar player is probably a necessity. There's no such thing as truly stingy defense that limits yards and points against the very best teams in college football. That's just become too hard to do. It seems like the offenses are just too explosive. But you can show up big when it matters, and a true superstar player gives you a chance to do that. I don't know that anyone is more likely than Nolan to kind of emerge as that superstar for the Dogs in 2021 along the way, much like maybe Ojulari had happened for him here during the 2020 season. I think Nolan Smith's a prime candidate to do that for this upcoming year, but this offseason, working, developing, taking that next step the way that Ojulari just predicted that he would, I think for Nolan over the course of the next few months, that's going to be incredibly important. Now, let me quickly shift gears here to an entirely different topic just for a second. Another former elite recruit for the Dogs has made his intentions known for the upcoming year, and it's not unexpected news. Tyson Campbell, as he put out on Twitter, and I'll show this to you, has announced his intentions to move on to the NFL draft. This is a tricky one for me because as I kind of searched through some of the mock drafts that are out there, you see various opinions on Campbell. In some cases, people view him to be a second-round pick. I have seen some mock drafts that put him in a first-round situation. There's a very good chance that he is the first defensive back from Georgia selected in this year's NFL draft. There's a lot of info out there that if you're Campbell or Campbell's camp, might lead you to believe, well, maybe Tyson should move on to the NFL draft. But this is also, to me, kind of that prime example of a guy that if he were to come back to Georgia, if he were to spend one more year here, could he put himself in the kind of rarefied air of not just being a first-round pick, but someone taking kind of the front end of the first round and all the big-time money that could come his way before, along with that? It's easy to want to second-guess these kinds of decisions. Ultimately, this is Campbell's choice to make. Obviously, I wish he would be back at Georgia for one more year, but in response to all this, my only choice is to wish him well with what he does in the future. By the way, coming up in just a moment, we'll let Terence Edwards tell you his thoughts on the decision by Campbell and what all players weigh in a situation like that. That's coming up. But first, let's introduce the show. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by our friends at Merriweather and Tharp. Hello to you, and thanks for being with us. No matter how you get to us today, live on video, 10 a.m., Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or on the radio at noon on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, and available as a podcast wherever you find them, including the world-famous DawgNation.com. And we would not be on the air today. We would not be able to do this if not for our friends at Merriweather and Tharp. They are your source for Georgia divorce. And let's face it, the divorce process is not always a fun thing to think about. In fact, it's probably never a fun thing to think about. But what can be a comforting thought, though, is that if you find yourself dealing with a divorce, if you find yourself about to go through this, knowing that you've got a strong advocate on your side to help you through all of that, that's one of the things that Merriweather and Tharp can certainly provide for you. They've got agents, lawyers, I should say, who've been through this thousands and thousands of times. The totality of experience for the company. They've been through this before. They've helped a lot of people before, and that institutional knowledge gained through all of that, they can put that to work for you. These are caring people. I have talked to people who have worked with them, and that's what they've told me is the great care and concern that the Merriweather and Tharp folks have shown for them, their specific situation, their circumstances. It makes me feel very proud to hear that. Makes me feel very comfortable making the recommendation. So check them out, your source for Georgia divorce. Find my friends at Merriweather and Tharp online at theatlantadivorceteam.com. That's theatlantadivorceteam.com. It is a busy day for us. We did not get a chance to hear from Mike Griffith yesterday because of some technical issues. I'll speak to Mike today before the show is done in a pre-recorded interview. Also coming up here in just a moment, we'll talk to Terence Edwards, the former Georgia wide receiver, on a bunch of topics. Terence actually spent some time in the last few days with Rick Gilbert, who's certainly a source of very much interest for many Georgia fans. We'll let you hear from Terence what his conversation was like with Rick Gilbert recently. That is all coming up in the course of a couple of minutes. Before that, though, let's go around the doghouse, delivered today by our friends at Marco's Pizza. And there was big news kind of outside the boundaries of on-field action for Georgia yesterday as Josh Brooks, not unexpectedly, but officially was announced as the Georgia athletic director yesterday. My prediction is that Brooks is going to be a pretty popular guy with Georgia fans. Obviously, I think that fans in general are just more interested in coaches and what's happening on fields of play, courts of play, more so than kind of what's happening in the offices, boardrooms, the administrative side of things. But every now and then there is a need, I think, to kind of, pay attention to what's going on with the administration part of that, and Josh Brooks will now be the face of that arm of the Georgia athletic process. I think fans are going to like him. One of the things I did think was interesting yesterday in Brooks talking about the nature of his relationship with Kirby Smart, the kinds of conversations that Brooks had with Kirby before he got the job, and kind of what he expects to be like working with Kirby on throughout after all of this. And I thought that Brooks gave a very good analogy of kind of how he views himself within the boundaries of his relationship with Kirby. I think this is really well said and an example of what I believe Georgia fans are going to like about Brooks. Please make sure you take a listen to this.
Kirby and I have had discussions about my aspirations before, so he knew clearly what my goal and aspirations were to be the AD here. I wanted to earn this on my own, quite frankly. I didn't want to have to ask anyone to lobby on my behalf. I wanted to get in the room at the table and compete against other sitting ADs. But when you talk about the relationship with head coaches, look, you're the AD. I'm the boss. I'm the one that's ultimately responsible for this athletic department. But I understand that there's coaches that are like, they're stars. If this were a movie set, I'd be the director and be the actor, right? And we have to find ways to make them be successful.
Listen, I think that's a really good analogy from Brooks, that Smart may be the face of Georgia football because he's the most famous person. He's like, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, or whatever the movie star you kind of like. He's the person that shows up on the poster. But you can't have a movie without a director. Behind the scenes, that person is just as critical to the success of a movie. The fact that the movie even exists, the director is just as important for that as anything is. And I think Brooks casting himself in the role of director to Kirby Smart's movie star persona, I think that's actually probably a pretty apt analogy all the way around, that the inner workings behind the scenes for Georgia athletics are important. They're kind of boring. We don't always talk about some of that procedural stuff, the raising of the money, the announcing of the budgets, things like that. That's, not always interesting, but just because something is uninteresting doesn't mean it's not crucial. And in the case of this, I think it probably is. Brooks went on to talk even more about kind of what it's going to be like working with Kirby and kind of how all of that extends to the way that it'll relate to all the coaches around the UGA programs. Here's a little bit more from Georgia's new athletic director.
We've entrusted Kirby to lead this football program. He knows what he needs to be successful. It's our job to support them, and that goes for every coach. It's not just Kirby. It's every single coach on our staff. We've hired them to do a job to lead their program, so it's our job to help guide them and help give them the resources they need to be successful in every facet of it. And, of course, through that process, especially a year like this, there's going to be some no's. There's going to be some things we can't do. But as long as you have a great heart and you communicate with people and explain why, you can work through those things. But my humility is first and foremost, so I never think that I've got to come in just pounding my fist on the table saying this is the way it's got to be. That I came up as a student manager, so that's not my mindset. So I can't pretend to be someone I'm not. But I do understand our role in all this. And at the end of the day, we all serve this institution, and this institution has been here before us and it'll be here after us.
Listen, I think very quietly, Brooks right there says something that's pretty important, that he says, listen, I'm going to view myself as an advocate for Kirby Smart in football, but my ultimate advocacy is to the institution. And I think institutions matter. And I think realizing that Georgia football, that G on the side of the helmet, was a thing that existed well before Josh Brooks, Kirby Smart, and as he says, will exist even after all those guys are done with the program. I think that's a pretty important thing to keep in mind, and I love the way that Brooks was able to articulate that right there. It's Around the Doghouse, delivered today by our friends at Marco's Pizza. Marco's is America's most beloved pizza. It's real, authentic pizza made the Italian way, and what's important for me and my family are the great savings we enjoy when we choose Marco's Pizza. Let me give you an example of that right now. By the way, you're getting ready for a wild card weekend, a lot of pro football. Marco's Pizza is a great pairing for that. And how about this deal right here? A large one-topping pizza, 10 chicken wings or dippers for just $17.99. That truly is a DawgNation game day favorite. No matter what game you're talking about, order yourself some this weekend, whether through the Marco's app or online at marcos.com. Great to have Marco's Pizza as a part of Around the Doghouse here today. Busy for us Incredible drama at both Tennessee and Auburn, by the way. Probably the juicy stuff at Tennessee, but certainly don't ignore what's happening at Auburn. We'll talk about that before we're done. We'll hear from Mike Griffith on a number of topics before the show is over with. But on Thursdays, what's really quickly becoming a staple and something I really enjoy, a chance to speak to former Georgia wide receiver Terence Edwards. I did pre-record this, but you're going to enjoy it. Terence Edwards here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
Here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. Yes, I am in my home right now. For those of you watching on video, you can tell that. But a little bit of a phone issue that we're working to correct. But lucky enough, the magic of technology still makes talking to guests possible here. So we'll welcome in the great former Georgia wide receiver and a terrific analyst and a fun guy to have as a part of DawgNation. Let's talk to Terence Edwards right now. Terence, thanks for your time. I certainly appreciate you being with us on the show today.
Oh, thanks, babe. You know, it's always a pleasure coming on the show.
Let me talk. I want to get to the Peach Bowl here in a moment because obviously that was a good day for Georgia. But there's some news that's kind of happened since then I'm kind of curious about. You know, Tyson Campbell has declared for the NFL draft. And this to me is a tricky situation, Terence, right? Because on the one hand, Campbell has a chance to be a first-round pick. But there's also, you know, if you follow mock drafts, things like that, the possibility that he might not land in the first round. He seems like the kind of guy that if he were to come back to Georgia could really solidify, I don't want to say guarantee himself a chance to go in the first round because nothing in life's ever truly a guarantee, but he would certainly have a chance to increase his chances of being drafted in the first round. You work with a lot of players. You've even worked with some guys who've gone on to the NFL. What would your advice be to a guy like Campbell in a situation like this?
First and foremost, a lot of us don't know their situation. At some point, it could be all about family situation where I need to go to take care of my family. So we don't know all the inside scoops of why he decided to declare for the draft. And on the other hand, I think I'm the type of guy that it's a tricky situation. I thought Devontae Smith should have went on and left last year. He probably would have been a late first round pick, but go ahead and start getting your money, getting in the league early. But he came back and it helped them tremendously. He's probably going to be a top 5, top 10 pick. And then on one hand, that was the quarterback from USC a few years ago, the Barkley kid, that was going to be the number 1 pick as a junior, came back, fell to the 4th round. So you just never know. You just never know how it's going to work out. I assume he got a grade that he was satisfied with, and he's going to bet on himself to take his talents to the NFL.
Another guy that made his announcement this week going to the NFL, and this was not a surprise, was Richard LeCounte. He's had 4 great years at Georgia. We saw him get in at the very end of the Peach Bowl, a game he very much wanted to be a part of, recovering from the injury sustained after his motorcycle accident back in November. Terence, when you look at LeCounte, 4 years in the program, the leadership, the on-field contribution, just the face of the program in many ways, at least one of the key faces of the program, what do you think LeCounte has meant to Georgia?
He's meant a lot. I mean, he's a guy that came in with a lot of accolades. I think he was the guy that kind of kept that class together or encouraged people. Let's go be a dog, and he will be a dog forever. I mean, that mantra that we always label people with, he is a damn good dog. He's going to be missed, not just on the field presence, just his locker room presence. Probably going to be the biggest factor that someone in that secondary or on the team period is going to have to take the slack, because he was definitely a leader in that locker room.
I think that's true. And you mentioned the recruiting part back as a member of the class of 2017. It's funny that you say it that way, because when I think of LeCounte myself, I'll probably always think of him as just one of the most vocal recruits in the early stages of the Smart era. He was obviously the first commit to Kirby Smart. But as you said, a guy that convinced other guys to commit to Georgia. And then, Terence, at the end of that recruiting cycle, also convinced those guys not to take visits to other places, because this was still early in Kirby's regime. You know, Kirby hadn't demonstrated his ability to really lock these recruits down yet and close strong with signatures on National Signing Day. But LeCounte and others, but certainly I think of Richard being at the top of this list, were instrumental in kind of keeping that class together. Elite players from the state of Georgia that started the recruiting momentum that really still exists here to this day. When I think of Richie, that's really one of the most, I guess, prominent memories that I'll have of him.
Right. Even now, I think once these recruits come on the campus, Rich will be the first guy that I put especially my defensive players with. He's going to be their host, because he's very charismatic, and he's a guy that he's a leader. People want to follow him. So he's going to be missed on and off the field. Someone got to step up in that role, whoever that may be. But that's the biggest part that I'm going to miss about Richard is his leadership and how he galvanized the troops to just be all in for Georgia.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. So we found out this week that some key offensive pieces are going to return. JT Daniels obviously coming back at quarterback. Georgia's also got a lot of experience right now at receiver. James Cook, the running back, announced that he's coming back. Terence, how valuable do you think that it is for this Georgia offense to have all that experience returning, the production, the rushing yards, the receiving yards, Daniels, the experience there at quarterback? It kind of feels like a different tone for the Georgia offense this season because what it didn't have a year ago, continuity, boy, it really seems to have that going into 2021.
Most definitely. I think who are leaving? Trey Hill is leaving.
That's right.
I can't think of anyone else that's really that played a lot. That was a valuable piece to their offense. Everyone is coming back, and you have that continuity coming back. You have your quarterback, most importantly. Hopefully, we get a spring, and everyone now can really understand what Coach Monken is trying to do offensively. I think he can put in more of his playbook, more things that he would like to do because now he has a quarterback that he trusts to go out there and perform and do the things that he would like. Even I saw Coach Monken say earlier that JT Daniels has the ability to check off and get us in the right place. So when a coordinator gives the quarterback that luxury, that means he's trusting him a lot.
You've had more time to think about the Peach Bowl now. You and I talked about this as a part of our DawgNation postgame show this past Friday. I thought it was a good win for Georgia. Frankly, I thought the final moments were pretty thrilling to watch. What did you make of the Dogs concluding their 2020 season with a win against a top 10 foe on the first day of 2021?
I thought it was a good win. I think people really now need to start giving Cincinnati its credit and not just say, oh, y'all beat a AAC team. As we can see, rumors are that the defensive coordinator from Cincinnati is interviewing at LSU. So he's actually helped himself the way he had that defense prepared. And we saw that on Saturday, the way they stopped the run. Just seemed like they're going to give up the run and they're going to stop the run and let us and see, can we throw the ball? We threw for almost 400, but I just didn't feel like it was very impactful 400, but we need all of those 400 to win the game. So Cincinnati, give those guys credit, and you saw the excitement on the guys' face, especially Curtis, especially the team. They wanted to win this game. Like I said earlier, this did not feel like Texas 2 years ago at all.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. You mentioned the Cincinnati DC in the mix of the LSU job. I don't know about you, Terence, but I'm not sure I'd want to battle that defensive scheme every single year. That was a tricky little defense in Cincinnati had going for it on Friday.
It did. I mean, I think that coach had them well prepared. They had a game plan, and he stuck to it. And it just seemed like to me that he's coming in just to take away the run. If I know everyone knows Georgia lives and die trying to be physical up front, and they took that away. They did a great job, and it's like, can y'all beat us passing in football? And like I said, we threw for 400 yards, and we needed every yard to squeak out this victory.
If you're watching on video, you see Terence wearing his wide receiver academy sweatshirt. We're going to let you know in a moment how you can get in touch with Terence and be a part of the great work that Terence is doing, tutoring the next generation of pass catchers across the high school and college landscape. One thing before we get there, former protege of yours, I know you tweeted about this a little bit this week, Rick Gilbert, is he not leaving LSU? It seems like now, I guess it is official that he's in the transfer portal, even if there had been some delay on that maybe a little earlier in the week. I know you're inundated with questions about Gilbert because obviously you know him. Certainly this is going to be one of the big stories for Georgia football the next couple of weeks. Is there anything you can tell us about Gilbert right now?
I can tell you when I tweeted that, I mean, people were like, well, Coach O said, I had lunch with the young man just to go and talk to him, see where his head was at. We just had a good conversation. At that point, he was not officially in the portal. He attended to, and now he's official in the portal. So now teams can contact him. I haven't spoke to him in a couple of days right now. I just want to let him go and digest and see what he wants to do. And I don't put pressure on any of the guys that I train. I let them make their own decisions. And if Georgia's the place we want to be, I would love to see him there. But wherever he goes, I'm going to support him and continue to be that mentor that I've been to him since he was in the 9th grade.
I think the one thing that, even though I'm not a former player, I have an insight about, just having spoken to you over the years, and it's a tough decision, right? I mean, you've only got one college career to give. And even in a day and age now where like the transfer portal makes leaving a little easier, it's still not that easy. You know, you still have to go through all kinds of hoops if you make the wrong choice. So I can only imagine I'm sure he must feel pressure. I don't mean the kind of pressure of like someone like me that likes him to come to Georgia. I mean the kind of pressure that comes from, oh boy, I'm only a college player once in my life. I better make sure I get this right. I would imagine that would lead to some sleepless nights for a young man.
I think so. I think, he made the first decision to go to LSU. And at that point in time, he thought was the right choice for him. And for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. Nothing bad against LSU. Just for him, it didn't work out. So now this decision is very important. You get the one-time transfer waiver, and I don't think it'd be in his best interest to transfer again. Like, just go and stick it out and make it work. If you're not physically harmed, then there shouldn't be no reason for you to leave again. Find a home. You understand the recruitment process now. You understand what you're looking for as a year older, an adult, because he's a young man, and find the best fit for you, wherever that may be, because you got to be happy there, not anyone else. And that's exactly what I told him.
Terrence, there's nothing more important to me than people like you who make a big impact in the lives of players, whether it be guys that go to Georgia or guys who go to play somewhere else. I'm just a big believer in football. I want to be an advocate for football players because I think that football is such a powerful thing in their lives. And I love the work that someone like you as a personal coach is doing with these guys, not just teaching them the game, but as you said, going to have lunch with them and helping them make, or at least being a voice to listen to as they face big decisions, things like that. I appreciate the work that you're out there doing in the community. And for people who want to improve their craft, who want to get better at the receiver game, the pass catching game, how can they get in touch with you, Terrence?
You can find me on all social media platforms. That's Terence Edwards, Wide Receiver Academy. That's on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If anyone looking to improve their craft, I'm the guy that you could come to. I love teaching this position. I love teaching guys to be the best version of themselves. Not all guys are going to go Division I to Power 5. Some guys may just want to be the best high school player that they could be. I'm willing to, and my mantra is, if you're willing to learn, I'm willing to teach.
I love that, Terrence. Great stuff. Thanks for being here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. Hope you have a great week, and I'll look forward to talking to you next week as well.
Thanks, B.A. Look forward to it.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
I will tell you, I love having Terence Edwards as part of this program. I think that he is just a terrific voice around, not just because of who he's connected to and his own experience as a player, although that's a very valuable resource in and of its own right. He's just a thoughtful guy, so it's always fun to have him as a part of DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. Let me also say this, as we move towards, as I said before, what are we calling this? Super Wild Card Weekend? Is that what's being called? Expanded edition of the NFL playoffs here for round one. No better way to have some fun with that than to get involved with my friends at MyBookie. You can get a big first deposit bonus. You can get it matched up to halfway, right? So if you put in $2,000, they're going to give you $1,000 extra to go in your account. It's kind of what MyBookie's been known for, the best player perks in the industry. That's what they are famous for, and they want to do that for you as well. But in order to take advantage of this great offer, you got to use the promo code DawgNation. Here's how it works. Find MyBookie online. Just type it into your browser, MyBookie. The internet will do the work for you. Then after that, when you get there, use the promo code DawgNation. It's winning season as you head towards the pro football playoffs. After that, you play, you win, you get paid. But it's got to be with my friends at MyBookie, and you've got to use the promo code DawgNation for the big first deposit bonus. All right, we have got a lot to get to when it comes to the SEC, so let's roll through that now as part of our SEC through. First of all, there are reports out there, and these reports could become official at any point in time, that Auburn coach Brian Harsin has tabbed Derek Mason as his next defensive coordinator. We talked yesterday about the rumor this could happen. It seems like now this has moved beyond rumor. There are a number of outlets reporting this is indeed going to be the case, and frankly, I think this is a big hire. If you are a guy like Harsin who has no connection to the SEC, someone who is a successful coach but no connection to the SEC, you've got to do something to make yourself feel like the SEC once you get down here. And hiring a guy like Mason is certainly an example of that. He's been in this league for a while. You can say what you want as Derek Mason as a head coach, but this is a sharp defensive mind. And of all these kind of big-name defensive minds who've been kicked around for various jobs, Will Muschamp, Kevin Steele. I'm not sure that anybody has a better defensive coordinator than Derek Mason. I think what he did during his time at Stanford probably speaks for itself. When he was the defensive coordinator there, this was a guy who had great success, and I think this is truly a very interesting hire for Auburn once it goes down and becomes official. By the way, on the other side of the ball, this is still in kind of the rumor stage, but there is certainly a little bit of interest in the notion that maybe Mike Bobo, who has been re-upped as offensive coordinator at South Carolina, but most people would view South Carolina as a better job than, most people would view Auburn as a better job than South Carolina, even with the turmoil that's been on there at the Plains. It looks like Bobo could be in the crosshairs here to be the offensive coordinator there for Harsin, so that's worth following. Pretty good drama there, as they like to call it, the loveliest village on the Plains at Auburn, with Mason reportedly set to be defensive coordinator, Mike Bobo set to become the offensive coordinator. Possibly. That's still, as I said before, in the rumor stage, but keep your eye on all of that. However, what's going on at Auburn has nothing on what's going on at Tennessee. This is one of those things that, even though I'm kind of an SEC obsessive, we do the SEC through every day, in retrospect, based on the news of the last 24 hours, I got to say, I don't think we've talked nearly enough about this Tennessee situation. Either I just wasn't aware of just how volatile it had become, or maybe all of this has just been kind of simmering below the surface, and now it's out there for everybody to see. Let me give you all of this as I understand it. Yesterday, Chris Lowe, who is an ESPN reporter plugged into the SEC, very close, for instance, to Nick Saban, but I believe he's actually someone who lives in Knoxville. He knows the Tennessee program very well. Lowe goes on The Zone, the sports radio station in Nashville, and he lays out for a number of reasons why he didn't think that Jeremy Pruitt was going to be able to keep his job at Tennessee, that the situation almost become untenable. And obviously Tennessee's a losing team right now, and maybe that's the motivation that starts all of this. But beyond that, there's the whiff of NCAA investigations. We've heard that lawyers have been hired. Lowe laid all of this out. It's worth going to find the interview that he did. I think it's 104.5 The Zone in Nashville. Some of you sports radio addicts can probably correct me on that, but I believe it's 104.5 The Zone in Nashville that Lowe was on, kind of saying that he thought the end was near for Jeremy Pruitt. We now have even more reporting on this. Another ESPN guy, Mark Schlabach, and this has really come out in just the last couple of hours since we've been on the air here today, that there is now a hiring freeze. Some people on Twitter kind of having fun with the, quote, hiring freeze, what that might mean in terms of maybe trying to hire Hugh Freeze, but nonetheless, a hiring freeze for Tennessee football, that the football coaches have not been given their contract extensions right now. All of this stemming from, as I said before, the NCAA stuff hanging overhead, allegations of improper conduct. And what's interesting here from a Georgia standpoint is the recruit in question happens to be Amarius Mims, the 5-star offensive lineman who obviously became a member of the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, the other insinuation that's out there, and I swear it seems like every single day we're talking about some sort of alleged conspiracy. I don't really mean to do that. I don't really necessarily want to do that. But what you're seeing a lot of on social media is that, well, is all of this an attempt at Tennessee to kind of accelerate the NCAA investigation so they can have an excuse to get rid of Jeremy Pruitt, and maybe even more importantly, fire him with cause so that they don't have to pay either any of the buyout or all of the buyout? I don't know, but boy, this is all happening really fast here. The notion that that Tennessee looking to move on from Jeremy Pruitt, the situation becoming so toxic, maybe there's no way that Pruitt can truly survive. When you hamstring somebody in terms of hiring assistants or giving the promised raises to assistants, at that point in time, it would seem like the writing is going to be on the wall. I've said before that if there was a way to be patient with Pruitt, eventually him stabilizing himself and actually being the kind of coach that could remain employed there for a while because of his recruiting chops, because of his defensive coaching chops, my assumption would be you might be eventually able to do that, but who knows what's truly going on behind the scenes that makes that untenable. I'll tell you this, the tenure for Philip Fulmer as Tennessee athletic director has been kind of a wild ride here. That is quite a time there. So keep your eye on all of that, and we'll continue to cover kind of how that's all going here. But a lot of ESPN reportage, if you will, about a pretty volatile situation for Jeremy Pruitt there at Tennessee. One more story to get to here really quickly. This is certainly less interesting in comparison to other stuff, but the Joe Brady protege Jake Peetz has been hired as LSU offensive coordinator. So LSU trying to recapture the magic that Joe Brady had for that program in 2019. By hiring one of his offensive staffers from his Carolina Panthers coaching staff. He will now be OC there for the LSU Tigers. And by the way, I guess the word on the street is that Brady is also interviewed for the Atlanta Falcons head coaching job. Trust me when I tell you, I would not mind that as a Falcons fan. We will make that your SEC through and give you a chance now to hear an interview that I recorded earlier this morning with DawgNation's Mike Griffith.
And here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp, want to pay off what we promised yesterday. We said we talked to our buddy Mike Griffith. Our phone issue prevented that from happening. So we're going to go ahead and record a Zoom interview with Mike here now so we can put it as part of the show here today on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. Mike, thanks for being ready to go with us yesterday and being flexible with us to join us today. Folks want to hear from you, so we're glad we're able to provide that for the audience.
Yeah, thanks, BA. It's been a busy week for Georgia, busier than I think we thought, right? And it's not over yet.
No, that's exactly right. So we're going to try to cover all the news that's out there. We'll run through some of this pretty quick. I had a chance to watch the Josh Brooks press conference on our DawgNation YouTube page. I wasn't a part of that discussion yesterday, but I did watch it. Brooks comes across as exactly the way that I've kind of always viewed him to be. Kind of a fan-friendly guy's guy, so to speak. I think that Georgia fans are going to be pretty comfortable with him as Kirby Smart's the face of Georgia athletics, but as the advocate for Kirby in that athletic director role. I'm guessing that Brooks is probably going to be pretty popular. What did you make of all of that?
Yeah, I think he's like-minded with Kirby. I think that's the whole key. Really, the thing is Josh has already been working with Kirby in Georgia for the last year, really. I mean, he's taken over a lot of these operations. Greg McGarity was ready to retire in the spring and only really stayed on to help manage and oversee during the COVID crisis. So behind the scenes, Brooks has already been working with Kirby. He oversaw West End Zone. He's overseeing this building, an $80 million new football building. So he's done some scheduling. So he's already worked with Kirby Smart and with a lot of university projects. So he's kind of already auditioned. It was funny when Greg McGarity announced his retirement on December 1st, effective year end. The next day, Josh Brooks did like a live Zoom. That was like his live audition. And Jerry Moorhead sat back and watched as Josh took questions from the media for 30 minutes. I mean, he was absolutely grilled. And, President Moorhead was asked about that yesterday, about hiring a 40-year-old guy who'd never been, an AD at this level versus an experienced person. And he said, I just felt like this was the right guy. And President Moorhead liked the energy. So, listening to Josh last night, I did a story. It's up on DawgNation right now. 3 things, some concepts and ideas. I think the only people who might be a little uncomfortable might be some of these non-revenue coaches who realizes this guy is here to win. And just getting along and being quiet, no. He wants championships in all sports. I sense some pressure coming in some of the non-revenue sports, BA.
So along those lines, for the average fan, the coaching side of sports is a lot more interesting than the administrative side of sports. A lot of folks probably didn't know who Josh Brooks was until yesterday. What do you think is kind of like job one on his to-do list? It doesn't seem like there are any new buildings that need to be built because Georgia's announced a lot of that in recent years. What is Brooks keying in on, would you guess, for the fan who maybe doesn't pay a lot of attention to the behind-the-scenes administrative work that goes on at a place like UGA?
Well, number one, he talks about enhancing the fan experience. I mean, Georgia's no different than anywhere else. Once we get back to full attendance, and let's all pray and hope that happens soon, you've got to enhance that stadium experience so that fans want to come to Sanford Stadium and pay those ticket prices and those seat licenses essentially via the donation minimum, instead of watching it at home on the 65-inch big screen. So he wants to continue to enhance the fan experience. He has a lot of aggressive, he talked about the lights. He wants to be innovative and move forward while at the same time protecting the Georgia tradition. Listen, let's just call out the elephant in the room here. Greg McGarity left and is the president of the Gator Bowl. Josh talked a lot about the Athens community and how he wants to embrace and improve the Athens community. we're coming to a head here on this Jacksonville thing in 2023. Now, this year wasn't that much of a factor because there was no recruits couldn't go there anyway. We know the contract signed through 2023. But BA, I think that's boiling to be the issue. Is can Greg McGarity, the former 10-year AD, who is now the president of the Gator Bowl, convince Georgia to stay when we know Kirby Smart's thoughts on that, and we know that Josh has talked a lot about the importance of the Athens community and trying to embrace this community and do things in the community and the millions of dollars of impact that more games in Sanford Stadium will have, especially if you're investing into the stadium and trying to make it an even better place. So to me, that's the big issue. We're not there yet. That's years off, 2023, this contract is signed. But to me, that's the big, giant issue in the path.
So I look forward to following that to see where that goes. You reported this week at DawgNation about an upcoming surgery for Nakobe Dean, the linebacker. I jokingly said on yesterday's show that Roquan Smith also missed spring practice prior to his junior season. I'm half serious, half kidding when I bring that up. But what can you tell us more about the situation with Dean, who I think quietly has been a very strong contributor for the Georgia defense? It seems like other guys get more attention, but I don't know that anybody shows up week to week, does their job any better than what Dean does, and now I guess dealing with a little bit of a health setback.
Yeah, if we're going to be honest about it, Nakobe had a better season than Monty Rice. I know Monty was a Butkus Award finalist, in all respect to Monty, but Monty had that foot issue that bothered him from the Alabama game on and wasn't really himself. I mean, Nakobe was the team tackles leader. He had 3 consecutive games with double-digit tackles, and then all of a sudden I noticed, geez, he doesn't seem to be making as many tackles. And I thought, what's going on with Nakobe Dean? Well, obviously, we know now that he had a torn labrum and he was playing through that injury, BA. I mean, he went from 12, 14, 16 tackles to like 1, 2, 2. And then whatever they shot him up with in the Peach Bowl was good enough that he was healthy enough to make 6 stops. I guess they said, tear the doggone arm off because you're going to have surgery anyway. So he went all out. Big touchdown or a big first down saving tackle. I know that Tyreek Stevenson gets credit for the pass deflect on 3rd down, but on 2nd down, you go back and watch, and Nakobe Dean had an open field tackle from behind on what would have been a first down. So I think you're right. I think he's very important. I think he's one of the key figures on the defense along with Lewis Seen, and we'll find out what Jordan Davis does. But I would agree with you that he has quietly become, really the epicenter of that defense and probably the most pivotal guy in the middle of that defense.
So you mentioned Jordan Davis. It's been such a wild week of good news guys coming back, other guys moving on, some of that not unexpected. And it's like every time you refresh your Twitter or, go to the pages of DawgNation.com, you're seeing a new player announcement one way or another. But Davis is that, big name that's still out there. And gosh, if you got the angel on the left shoulder, the devil on the right shoulder about should he stay, should he go? I could make a pretty convincing argument on either side of that. Selfishly, as a Georgia fan, I obviously want Davis to return, but acknowledge, what could be gained by him potentially moving on. I certainly think he'll be attractive to draft scouts whenever he does enter the NFL draft. But what can you tell us about the decision that still awaits, or maybe the announcement from Davis that's still yet to come?
Well, I think he was leaning towards staying until the Peach Bowl, and then I heard after the Peach Bowl he was leaning towards leaving. And you'd hope that the momentum that JT and James Cook and Devontae Wyatt provided, a couple days ago, saying they were staying, you were hoping that maybe Jordan Davis, would want to be a part of that. But that hasn't happened yet. The family's doing their due diligence. It's so hard. There's so many agents out there that tell these guys that they're going to go higher. I've never met an agent who tells a guy who's going to go lower than he actually goes, by the way. He on the one hand, he's being told, oh, no, you could be a first rounder. But on the other, you go, dude, you weren't even first team All-SEC. If you look at the defensive tackles that have gone in the top 10 in the last 2 years, and there's been 3 of them, all of them were consensus All-Americans. I mean, they had a body of work. And the issue with Jordan is he has looked good at times, but he's lacked consistency throughout his career. And then he injured this year, the elbow. So what is his standard? I guess it comes down to the end. What we don't know is, for some guys, if you said, hey, you're going to be a second rounder and get a couple $1 million, they'd go, hey, that's enough for me. But for other guys, they go, wow, how much more could I stay now? Seeing what Nick Saban and Alabama, the code they've cracked, is they're able to educate their players to the extent that these Alabama guys, Alex Leatherwoods, Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, these guys understand the financial advantages of coming back for another year. the risk-reward portion of the formula, and it's worked. And so the following Alabama guy at Georgia, they don't have that momentum. They don't have that example of that guy that came back for a senior year. And wow, did he ever really improve his draft stock? Because all these guys just leave. They leave right away, right? It's almost like, new money versus old money in the sense that Georgia's new at this championship level game. Alabama's been playing it a long time. Their system is more refined, and they've done a better job of educating their players on staying and getting that higher draft status than Georgia has. And it's not Kirby Smart's fault, BA. He's telling them the same thing that Nick Saban is telling his players. It's just at Alabama, there's example after example after example, and that hasn't happened yet at Georgia.
Very quick final question. And listen, I'm the last one to ever complain about officiating. I just think that winners aren't whiners. But Georgia got jobbed last night in basketball at Baton Rouge. That was truly, truly awful, especially the in-game scenario. It was obviously an out of bounds on LSU that wasn't even reviewed. Listen, it's tough to win on the road in the SEC, as people have said before. But that was pretty bad last night.
It was bad, but you know what? It's been a long time where that's okay for Georgia. I almost feel like, and I know we talk about, officials don't have a bias and, people are just – I think everyone has some level of bias to some degree. I really do. Whether you want to admit it or whether you're aware of it, it might even be something that's, subconscious. But it's okay for Georgia. They've gotten jobbed before. At some point, Tom Crean's got to lose his junk on the sideline. I know he doesn't like technicals. He's talked to me about he doesn't really think that's effective, and he doesn't ever want to lose a game on account of one. But it's almost like officials choose the path of least resistance. The home team does get the whistle. There's no doubt about that. All you got to do is look at the free throw disparity last night. LSU is a better team than Georgia, but Georgia played a better game and deserved to win. Unfortunately, sometimes I think calls go against certain teams. And I would say that even about the athletic director circle and scheduling. Georgia got a bye week the first week of the season in basketball. That's terrible. Last year we talked about a front-loaded schedule. The year before, 5 teams had a bye week. Tying this back into the start of our interview, I think more important for Josh Brooks than anything is when he goes in that SEC office, he digs in his heels and says, you know what? Georgia's not going to do what's best for the league anymore. Georgia's going to start doing what's best for Georgia. You find some other patsy to give bad schedules to and push around, because this ain't happening anymore. You're not giving 5 teams a bye week before us in one season like you did in 2019. You're not going to change our schedule and make it front loaded and take Alabama off of Florida's schedule. No, we're looking at that schedule, SEC, and I'm Josh Brooks, and I know you don't know me yet, but I'm working for Kirby Smart, and I'm not coming out of this room until Georgia has an equitable dealing from the league office on scheduling matters moving forward.
Mike, it's always great to talk to you on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. I certainly appreciate your time. I'll look forward to reading you at DawgNation.com and, of course, talking with you again soon as well.
Appreciate it.
So nice to be able a chance to talk to Mike Griffith there, normally on Wednesday, today on Thursday. We'd had a phone issue yesterday. Pre-record the interviews to try to make that a little easier today. Nothing's ever quite as easy as it's supposed to be, but nonetheless, phones are fixed, so we'll be back to normal tomorrow. But good to have both Mike and Terence Edwards as a part of the program today, and a great time to think about heading towards the weekend with some Classic City Lager. It is a true Athens original from our friends at Creature Comforts Brewing Company. It's a lager-style beer. That means it's lighter beer, but listen, there's no sacrifice on flavor. Great tasting beer, good-looking can, too. I love to see the video that we show of the cans coming off the line there. You can pick up some of those cans, 6 or 12 packs, whatever retailer you like to do your grocery shopping at. I promise you, they're well stocked with the Creature Comforts products, including Classic City Lager, so check out some today. It is good cold beer. So we've been doing the Gator Hater roll call for a little while here, and I've had a great time with that. But today, it is a true honor to give out the Golden Shoe. And for those of you who may have missed last couple of episodes of the program, you can go back and kind of find out what the Golden Shoe is. Somebody sent this to me on Twitter, and I hate to be so self-serving, but this is truly one of the greatest gifts I've gotten. Can we see today's winner of the Golden Shoe? It's Hunter Blaylock on Twitter, who says, DawgNation Daily, I did this for the Golden Shoe. It's in our Chief Gator Hater We Trust. If you're watching on video, you can see this. A drawn picture of me with the Gator Hater background behind me, holding Dan Mullen over my head. What an incredible job there by Hunter Blaylock. This is actually one of the really the coolest things I've ever seen. So Hunter, you are the winner of today's golden shoe. Thanks for being a part of our Gator Hater roll call, and to all of you, thanks for being here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. We will see you again tomorrow. And on video, appreciate you being here today as a part of our R.S. Andrews cool down as well as DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. How about the drawn picture of me mulling high over my head, almost like the Ultimate Warrior press slam there? Boy, you'd love to see that. Great job by Hunter. I really appreciate that. That is a true cherished keepsake from me for sure. And of course, I'm certainly cherishing my time with all of you as well. So as we transition to R.S. Andrews Cool Down, I'll remind you, whether it be air conditioning, heating, plumbing, or electric needs, you can trust R.S. Andrews to do all of that for you. You can find them online at rsandrews.com, and I can promise you they'll take good care of you. Q Nash says I'm about to do a Mullen spike. Yeah, I'll drop him from overhead and run and do the splash the way that Boyer would. That's about the way that I'll do that. Reginald Johnson, looking forward to that unfinished business for UGA in 2021. I'm right there with you on that, Reginald. Can't wait for all of that. We'll take a few more Facebook comments here. Philip Jordan Wells says, "Is that Hank Hill?" Yeah, it did. I'm not a full expert on that show necessarily, but it did kind of give you that Mike Judge. I think that's the animator on that. Kind of gave you a little bit of that vibe there. So I'm right there with you on that. I kind of noticed that there as well. All right, let's see what else. Chad Buchanan checking in to say we've definitely been a doormat in the SEC in all scheduling matters for sure. Yeah, I know that's something that Mike feels very strongly about. Tennille Calvino, yes, we will be back with Cover 4 Live tonight. Looking forward to that at our normal time at 7:30. Let's see what else. Jacob O'Neill says, what happened at the end of the game? There was what should have been a clear out of bounds on LSU. Ball saved by the Georgia player, throwing it off the LSU player the way that you see it basketball from time to time. Clearly went off the LSU player. Not only did the officials miss it in real time, the decision wasn't even reviewed. So yeah, that was a little bit of a problem. Jan Armistead says, I'm sick of the ref attacks in UGA, so now it's basketball too. Maybe we just got better. So, I mean, listen, I'm certainly sensitive to that. It's one of the reasons why, we don't do a lot of officiating complaints around here. I jokingly said on Twitter last night that I didn't like the officiating, and I didn't. But ultimately, I kind of agree with Jan, largely speaking, that winners aren't whiners. And, listen, this idea that you would walk around with this paranoia all the time about everybody being out to get you, that's just not really the way I want to live my life. I don't view things that way. I do believe that the responsibility for making Georgia everything it should be doesn't rest with some, schedule maker. It rests with Georgia to go out and win the games that it's supposed to play. So for the most part, I kind of agree with Jan on that. Let me get a couple of YouTube comments here today, too. Brady Pest Management says the ref blew the whistle, and that makes it non-reviewable. I guess that's maybe the case. Matt, you may be right about that. Larry Goldberg says, nice skinny jeans in the drawing, BA. Yeah, there you go. Frank Patterson says, with the loss of so many in the secondary and at linebacker, we're going to have to outscore Clemson to beat them next year. Our player subtractions have made this a closer game. Well, I think it was probably always destined to be a close game, but Georgia clearly has got some personnel issues to address when it comes to the secondary. Certainly linebacker probably a little bit there as well. There's clearly some personnel issues that have to be addressed there, and seeing how Georgia does that's going to be pretty interesting. You would think a guy like Tyreek Stevenson can slide in and be a starter at one cornerback for you. Maybe it's Keely Ringo who becomes that guy on the other side. Obviously, a need to replace Richard LeCounte at safety, so how Georgia does regroup in the secondary is going to be one of the major stories this offseason. I don't deny that. Jay Shipes on the stuff out there with Will Muschamp. Yeah, I have seen a lot of that, and I do think that's very interesting. Taiwan Taylor says every player that has left so far was expected. Yeah, that's probably true. Brady Pest Management says he thinks there will be a spring game, just no fans. Obviously, Matt's got his connections on that, so I would certainly listen pretty closely to what he says, and I think there's, I guess, a possibility that could be true. I guess no fans would be, for me, a little bit surprising, but certainly limited fans seems pretty likely. G. Grace Bama Boy, who's a big Bama fan, says he thinks that Nolan Smith's a stud, future first rounder. He says Nakobe Dean, Lewis Seen, Nolan Smith were the guys that I wanted for Alabama, so that's pretty high praise coming from a Bama fan, I guess. Frank Patterson says he thinks that Keely Ringo's upcoming freshman year, he'll be, of course, a redshirt freshman after it being injured this year. He says he could have as big of an impact as what Derek Stingley had in 2019. Boy, that's pretty high praise as well. Christopher Rule says all the excitement of 2021 could begin with a big win against Clemson and Charlotte. I love the idea of that. Henry Brooks predicting that Georgia could hit the transfer portal for defensive backs would not be a surprise to me either, to kind of bring that veteran presence in there. You know, secondary is another one of those spots where it seems like having some experience probably matters, and while Georgia's got plenty of talent remaining in its defensive secondary, maybe a little extra dose of experience wouldn't be such a bad thing. Let's see what else. Our buddies at Merriweather and Tharp mentioning the idea of Will Muschamp as a recruiter. Yeah, I mean, his presence in Athens, and then has been certainly talked about here, his presence in Athens as an off-field analyst or, whatever it's going to be, there's a reason why, programs like hiring those former head coaches. There's a reason why they enjoy doing that because of what they do bring to the table. And whether it's coaching expertise or just the understanding of how to go out and cast the widest net possible in recruiting, Muschamp's a guy that's got experience with that. Some of y'all know I'm a little bit of a Muschamp fan. I've probably defended him. I expected him to have better success at South Carolina than he ended up having. So I'm a little bit of a believer in Muschamp, although admittedly it has not worked out like I probably thought it would for him. Ben Green says, do we have a list of guys that are for sure early enrolling? Well, it's really more of a small list of guys who aren't. Dylan Fairchild's hanging around because he wants to wrestle. There's only like a couple more left. Who are the others besides Dylan that are not early enrolling?
Jared Wilson,
okay.
Jamon Dumas-Johnson, and Kamari Lassiter. And those latter two, their schools do not allow them to graduate and enroll early. Which
was the same stuff you've dealt with like Pace Academy and schools like that in the past. Correct. Yeah. So it's really almost this is just a weird year because, as Kirby has said, for a lot of these guys, there's no reason to stick around high school. Now, someone like Dylan does because he wants to win a state championship in wrestling. But for most of these guys, there's just no point in sticking around high school because some of these guys don't have much of a high school to stick around to anymore. And I'm not making light of the global pandemic. I'm just saying that the traditional senior season is just not really senior year is just not really taking place for a lot of people. So either you're, by school rule, you can't enroll early, or you have a true spring sport or, post-fall sport that you want to be a part of. Other than that, most everybody else in this class is enrolling early. And Georgia's obviously working to do what it can to make room for them all. Zad Tomberlin said, any chance the shoe makes its way down to Jacksonville this year? Yeah, maybe it'll be like, this is an obscure reference. You know how like when the Stanley Cup shows up in like the rink for like the Stanley Cup finals, you have like the guy in the suit with like the white gloves carrying it around. Maybe we'll do something like that for the golden shoe, bringing that out there. That could definitely be a thing. I wouldn't mind that. I'm glad that y'all are having fun with that because I have certainly enjoyed that so far. Appreciate you asking that, Zad. All right, it's really gotten late because we were so late starting today, so we're going to do one or two more and get out of here. Randy Hall says, Sal, you're coming back. That's my expectation. I know there have been some chatter about him, but my expectation is that Jamari will return. Matt Rugavina says, Muschamp turning down the Texas defensive coordinator job. Yeah, we talked about it the other day that the way that report was worded, that he turned down the job, to me, interesting in that, well, maybe he had something else that he wanted instead. Now, it seems likely that a chance to be at Georgia while his son is a graduate, or I should say a preferred walk-on quarterback, maybe that was the thing that he wanted. Here's the other thing, too, about being an analyst as opposed to a DC, that once you become a coordinator again, you're kind of outside the pool of of head coaching hires. Derek Mason, who takes the Auburn job, well, he's got a great job. It's high paying, but it's going to be a while again before Mason is back in kind of that head coaching pool. Same thing with Matt Luke a year ago. Luke lost his job at Ole Miss. Maybe the way in which that ended for him made him realize that he wasn't a candidate for head coaching jobs right now, so why not go to a place like Georgia, work my way back up the coaching ladder. It certainly worked for Sam Pittman in that spot before that, career advancement, so why not go take advantage of that? If you're Muschamp choosing not to do that, by being an analyst, it's a off-field job, it's less money, but you are still in that category of guys who could get head coaching interviews. I'll give you the perfect example of this. Butch Jones, upon leaving Tennessee as head coach, became an analyst at Alabama, and eventually he's now head coach again at Arkansas State. That sometimes for fired head coaches, the off-field analyst role is a way to at least keep yourself in the head coaching category in a way that sometimes becoming a coordinator makes you viewed as a coordinator once again. Over here on YouTube, we're going to get ready to go after that. Christopher Rule says Auburn's alums and boosters keep coaches away from the Plains. Yeah, listen, the behavior of what happens in and around the program is certainly an impact on the coaches that choose to go there. There's no question about that. Scott Harris says, plus an analyst doesn't have to deal with the press. Yeah, listen, I know all kinds of high school coaches who feel this way. I have so many friends who are, various high school coaches, and they all say the same thing, that, you are a competitor, you want to be a head coach, and so by the time you get there, sometimes it just kind of becomes a little bit of a grind. So I hear from, my friends who are high school coaches all the time that, they've got X number of more years to be a head coach, and then after that, they're going to go be an assistant coach somewhere where you're not. And listen, it's obviously a lot of difference between being a high school coach and a college coach, but there's still pressure to win. There's still pressure to kind of, manage all the things that go on with the program. But when you're the assistant coach, a lot of that kind of stuff belongs to somebody else. So I hear a lot of people say, listen, I'm going to do my time. I'm going to be a head coach and kind of help set my family up and, make the money I need to make. Then after that, I love the game. I want to be around the players. I want to be around my coaching friends. I just want to be a head coach anymore. I mean, I'm sure that there's a degree to which for a lot of these college guys who get a chance to kind of, not be the face of a program anymore, not be grilled by, blowhards in the media. I'm sure a lot of them love the cloak of anonymity that comes their way once they do that. I don't take that as a small thing. Let's see. One more and we're gone. Keith Folds, thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that. Oh, we'll do this last. Matt Talley says that Sarkisian kind of seems like Tom Herman 2.0 part 2. Good offensive coach. That's about it. He better nail his staff hires. Texas is tired of waiting to be good again. Texas, I would say, is certainly somebody mentioned a moment ago, the off-field stuff. Texas is very tough with that. There's also a lot of politics seemingly around the Austin. Maybe all these state capital schools have some of that, but it seems like there's a lot of politics around the Texas job. It does not seem like a very fun place to be a coach. You kind of compare Herman to Sarkisian. Herman had that success at Houston. You recruited Ed Oliver. He almost got, what's his name, Tyree Cleveland to come to Houston. He'd had some success recruiting at the Group of Five level and had seemed like a pretty good coach, a rising star. That star is kind of diminished once he gets to Texas. In the case of Sarkisian, we've seen him be an okay head coach before. Obviously, he had maybe some personal demons that impacted his success. But in terms of what he did with the Alabama offense this year, it's as good a job calling plays as anybody I've ever seen. So, I mean, part of what he's hired to do at Texas is bring that competency, to that program. So Herman was a good offensive coordinator, but I don't know that Herman, as Ohio State offensive coordinator, was ever as good as what. In fact, I'm sure he wasn't as good a play caller as what Sarkisian was for Alabama. So from that standpoint, I am curious to see how it works. But as you said, for all these guys, it's who you hire to go along with you that kind of makes all the difference in the world. Thank you so much for being here today. As I mentioned off the top of the program, yesterday was obviously a pretty tough day for our country and, frankly, by proxy, our world. That's not no joking matter whatsoever. We don't talk about that kind of stuff on shows like this. It's just not our place to do so. But if you want to keep up with everything that is going on, the final tabulation in the Georgia Senate runoffs, what did happen in Washington. AJC reporter actually on the scene when it occurred. Scary situation, really, for her to be in the midst of all of that. You can read all of that online at AJC.com. Please get your Atlanta news now from AJC.com. I do invite you to stay up to date on what is happening in the country, even when we kind of avoid those topics. We hope can be a happy atmosphere here on our program. But check that out for yourself at AJC.com. Big thanks to our friends at R.S. Andrews, making the R.S. Andrews cool down possible. Air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric. You can trust R.S. Andrews to do all of that for you. Also, thanks for being here today. DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. We'll start on time tomorrow, and we'll see you then, 10 a.m. for DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. Look forward to seeing you then, everybody. For more DawgNation videos, check out youtube.com/DawgNation.